If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 10 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that on December 24th, 2024, Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis due to a bird strike into Busch Stadium. In the area code 314, it will be a burning bush, as described in Exodus 3:14. And Harris's death on December 24th will be exactly 3,140 days after her birth, and this hints at 314. She will be replaced by Michelle Obama, and then Barack Obama will replace Michelle. It is predicted that President Trump will die from a heart attack on December 26th, 2024. It is also predicted that Trump's heart attack will be triggered by a directed energy weapon that will target Trump through Bluetooth technology. The components inside the pointy thing that Trump took will facilitate this. And it is believed that when Trump visited Biden at the White House, Trump's Bluetooth MAC address was obtained, which will be used to target Trump with a directed energy weapon. It is predicted that on December 25th, Joe Biden will suffer a stroke. I am predicting that dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City, and there will be a large-scale evacuation on December 28th. Martial law will be declared in the U.S. I am predicting that Israel will bomb Iran on December 29th, 2024. After Kamala Harris's predicted plane crash on December 24th and Joe Biden's predicted stroke on December 25th, it is predicted that Joe Biden will replace Kamala Harris with Michelle Obama as the vice president. Joe Biden will then step down. Per the 20th Amendment, Congress will vote to make Michelle Obama the temporary president. It is predicted that Joe Biden will then step down and Michelle Obama will become the 47th president, and then she will appoint Barack Obama as the 51st vice president. It is then predicted that she will step down on January 12th and Barack Obama will become the 48th president. I am predicting that former President Jimmy Carter will die on January 28th. It is predicted that on April 20th, 2025, there will be an outbreak of monkeypox or Marburg disease or both. April 20th will be a symbolic beginning to a new pandemic. Alternatively, it could also be that the symbolic beginning to the new pandemic will be on April 1st, 2025, and that on April 20th, 2025, martial law will be declared because of the new outbreak. It is predicted that on June 9th, the day after the rapture, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the fifth trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens. The demons pretending to be aliens will claim to be here to help us with our nuclear weapons after Damascus, Syria is destroyed with a nuclear weapon the day before June 9th. And it is possible that June 9th will be the day Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. At some point, there will be a massive Mary apparition that will deceive the masses, because all Mary apparitions in history have been demons pretending to be Mary. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed. that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist, and 5G frequencies. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. It is predicted that on August 6th, 2025, the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. The reason for this is that Niagara Falls is Noah's flood symbolism, and the barge was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls, symbolic of Noah's Ark. Niagara in the native language means straight, narrow way, and Niagara's Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the CN Tower in downtown Toronto, because Toronto and its tower are symbolic of the Tower of Babel. In a game of horseshoes, the object is to aim the horseshoe and throw it at the metal stick, which is why the Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the metal stick that is the CN Tower. God is communicating that as testament for those who will live in the 1,000 years of Christ's reign on earth, the geography of North America will, as a result of a massive earthquake, be divided by a body of water from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi Delta. This destruction will be judgment on America and Canada for attempting to divide God's land, Israel. When this happens, the water in the Great Lakes will spill out over southern Ontario and Toronto. I am predicting that a solar flare will erupt on the surface of the sun and send a coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth on August 13th, 2025, which will knock out America's power grid and will lead to food shortages. The hit of the coronal mass ejection, predicted for August 13th, that will knock out the power grid will also knock many planes out of the sky. I am predicting that on August 23rd, 2025, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth, which will trigger the eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the east coast. The asteroid will also trigger a mega landslide on Hawaii Island that will trigger a mega tsunami that will hit the west coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2026. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived, and more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Make a note right now of these alternative platforms that you can find me on, in case you can't find me later. If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 17 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that President Trump will die from a heart attack on December 26, 2024. The date that this video is posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. December 14th revealed adding 1+1 days. The star player in the Navy-Army game that Trump attended was player number 11. He scored the first touchdown on a 1-yard run, and it was in the first quarter, which also hinted at 1-1. There was one interception in the game, which is symbolic of the turning over of political power to the blue team after the predicted death of Trump's death. And the one interception was caught by player number 1 in the first quarter when the score was 7-0. And videos on this channel explain how Trump is a type for Joshua in the Bible, which is symbolized by the number 7. This 1+1 days from December 14th to December 16th is also following a 1+1 days from December 12th. As I will explain, the signs on December 12th, when it was announced that Trump had been named Person of the Year by Time magazine for the second time, on the same day that he rang the opening bell on Wall Street near Ground Zero, where 2 planes struck 2 towers on 9/11, indicated or revealed adding 2 days to December 12th. And so from December 12th, which I will talk about in this video, we received the signs that indicated adding 2 days to get December 14th, which was the day of the Army-Navy game, which revealed adding 1+1 days or 2 days to get December 16th. December 16th was another step in the trail of signs leading to Trump's predicted death, and the signs on December 16th revealed adding another 2 days to reach December 18th, also another step in the trail of signs. On December 16th, there was a school shooting in which the shooter killed 2 people. And the call into 911 was made by a second grader. The 2 deaths and the call made by the second grader hinted at the predicted deaths of 2 political leaders, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And so, from the day that Trump rang the opening bell on Wall Street near Ground Zero, where 2 planes struck 2 towers, when at the same time Time magazine announced that Trump had been named Person of the Year for a second time. It is 2 + 2 + 2 days to December 18th. The date of another extremely prophetic sign on Wall Street. This is astounding because it was through the 9/11 events in Lower Manhattan near Wall Street that God pointed to President George Washington, who was inaugurated on Wall Street, and George Washington was born on the date 2/22, which is why we received a second prophetic sign on Wall Street 2 + 2 + 2 days, after he was named the Person of the Year for a second time near where 2 planes struck 2 towers in God's warning of judgment and destruction for the nation on 9/11. This is also the prophetic reason why Trump is predicted to die before his second presidency, 2 days after Kamala Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash. This is also why the call made to 911, which hints at 9/11, was made by the second grader in the shooting that killed 2 people. On 9/11, 2 planes struck 2 towers near Wall Street. Trump is predicted to die 2 days after it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in the 8+8+8th state to join the Union. The name Donald J. Trump is equal to 888 in English gematria, and the name of Jesus in Greek is equal to 888 in Greek gematria. The name Trump is equal to 88 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. Trump is predicted to die 8 days after the second prophetic sign on Wall Street that occurred on December 18th. On 9/11, Trump called into the local TV news station and inadvertently trumpeted that his tower on Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan. In the events of 9/11 is the story of the heroes of the 88th floor. The Tribute in Lights art installation that commemorated the Twin Towers was made up of 88 searchlights. According to Wikipedia, there are 88 places in America named Washington. Through the 9/11 events, God pointed to George Washington, who was inaugurated at the founding of the nation on Wall Street, after which he marched down Wall Street to Trinity Chapel, where he then consecrated the nation to God, saying that if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its divine protection and blessings. God's divine protection and blessings were temporarily removed on 9/11 as a warning for America, and God confirmed this through the fact that Trinity Chapel was the only building at Ground Zero to have survived the falling debris and did not even suffer a broken window due to the uprooted sycamore tree that sheltered the chapel. Today, outside what is now nicknamed the Miracle Chapel, there is a 20-foot-high bronze statue of the roots of this tree to commemorate this. These events on 9/11 pointed to God's warning in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 11 in the Bible for ancient Israel when it was raided by the ancient Assyrians who uprooted the, quote, sycamore trees, unquote, and caused, quote, the bricks have fallen, unquote. The collapse of the towers on 9/11 engendered a small earthquake that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street, where President Washington was inaugurated at the founding of the nation. It symbolized the foundation of America, which is the God of Israel and the God of the Bible, Jesus Christ, being cracked. Trump's first election campaign and presidency were synonymous with his border wall of security. The word Trump in archaic English means trumpet, or the sounding of a trumpet. Before the walls of security of Jericho collapsed in God's judgment, as described in the Bible, the Israelites blew trumpets. On 9/11, Trump called into Channel 9 News and trumpeted that his tower on Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan, and Wall Street was named after the 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, and the name Wall Street is equal to 45 plus 45 plus 45. The 45th president's first election campaign and the 45th presidency were synonymous with America's southern border wall of security. Trump was shot in the ear as he was talking about the border wall of security. The border wall of security collapsed after the 45th president left office. Trump is predicted to die on the 20th anniversary of the Indian Ocean tsunami that killed 220,000 people. On 9/11, a total of 220 stories collapsed, as each tower was 110 stories high. After 9/11, America sent its military into Afghanistan, and on the 20th anniversary, its operations there dramatically collapsed in another warning of God's impending judgment and destruction of America. The inverse of the number 45, in other words, 1 divided by 45, is equal to 0.0222. This is why the 45th president will die on the 20th anniversary of the 220,000 deaths in the Indian Ocean tsunami, 2 days after the death of the vice president, who is of Indian descent. As a result of these 2 deaths, the 44th president, who grew up in Indonesia for 4 years, will become the president again. And the tsunami 20 years ago was triggered by a magnitude 9 earthquake in Indonesia. 45 is the 9th triangular number. In a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 9th row is 45. Obama was inaugurated in 2009, and he will serve a second presidency that will have skipped the 45th presidency. The inverse of 45 is 0.0222, and exactly 222 months after the events of 9/11 that pointed to Washington, who was born on the date 222, was the 45th president's Oval Office speech regarding the CVD disease that ended precisely as the clock on the live TV news screen ticked 9:11 p.m. Trump's CVD disease speech was on the same day that the begins with a W, ends with an HO declared that it had become begins with a pen, ends with a demic, on the same day that the first professional athlete tested positive who played for the team from the 45th state, the Utah Jazz, and jazz is a genre of music that typically uses trumpets. Exactly 9 months after Trump's CVD disease Oval Office speech was the day of Trump's Oval Office speech regarding the approval of the thing by the begins with an F, ends with a D and A on that day. The approval of the thing was exactly 9 months and 222 months after the events of 9/11 that pointed to the inauguration of Washington on Wall Street, which was named after the 9-foot-high wall of security, and Washington was born on the date 222. The second prophetic sign on Wall Street on December 18th was 2 + 2 + 2 days after Trump was named Time's Person of the Year for the second time, while he rang the opening bell on Wall Street near where 2 planes struck 2 towers. The top news story on December 18th was how the Dow lost 1,123 points. 1,123 is the 188th prime number, and God uses this number to to point to H188 in Strong's Hebrew Concordance, which is the Hebrew word that means woe! Exclamation mark. It is used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God. The events of 9/11 that pointed to President George Washington occurred exactly 188 years after the only other time a foreign enemy attacked the nation's capital. On 9/11 in 1813, the British landed at Washington's Mount Vernon estate and then proceeded to burn down the Capitol building and the White House, but not before First Lady Dolly Madison famously rescued the portrait of George Washington. The Wall Street stock market loss on December 18th that pointed to the number 188 occurred 8 days before the predicted death of Trump. Trump's death will symbolize the long-last blast of the trumpets by the Israelites before the walls of security of Jericho collapsed in God's judgment. Trump's death will be the last Trump sign, and it will symbolize the collapse of America's walls of security and the beginning of the destruction of the nation. The loss on Wall Street on December 18th was blamed on the decision and statements by the 16th chairman of the Federal Reserve. The 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, was assassinated, as will Trump be assassinated. The name Abraham is equal to 44 in simple English gematria. Trump's death, the last trumpet sign, will be 4 + 4 days after the loss on Wall Street that was blamed on the 4 × 4th chairman of the Federal Reserve, who was appointed to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors by the 44th president. After Trump's death and the last trumpet sign, the 44th president will become the president again. As outlined in the 20th Amendment, Obama will become a quote-unquote temporary president. This is why Trump, the 45th president, will die on the 20th anniversary of the tsunami that killed 220,000 people. The inverse of the number 45 is the number 0.0222. Prior to the date 12/12, December 12th, 2024, God pointed to December 12th, 2024, related to the death of President Trump. In other words, there are other videos on this channel that are predicting that President Trump would die on December 12th. And as I will explain, these videos and their analyses are 100% correct. The analysis is 100% correct, and these extremely important videos must be watched. The signs that occurred on December 12th that were expected in advance of December 12th confirmed all of the analysis, and as I will explain, the signs revealed adding 2 more days to get December 14th. These other videos that predicted that President Trump would die on December 12th were posted long before December 12th, and I have the email and forensic notes PDF document to document that December 12th was known many weeks before December 12th. On December 12th, 12/12, Trump rang the ceremonial opening bell on Wall Street, and Time magazine announced that Trump had been named Person of the Year for the 2nd time. Hello, welcome. This video is predicting that President Donald Trump will die from a heart attack on December 16th, 2024. As we can see here, this email was composed on December 14th. It has been known since the December of 2019 that the death of Trump would be a major prophetic event, a prophetic sign that although at that time was recognized it would have consequences, it was not nearly known how consequential Trump's death would in fact ultimately be, because as a result of Trump's death, the Antichrist will become the president again. Because he is predicted to die on December 16th, 2024, the day before the electors in the state legislatures meet to cast their votes for the president-elect. Trump is technically not the president-elect yet. And when Trump dies, the state legislatures in the swing states that are controlled by Democrats will elect Kamala Harris as the president-elect. She is then predicted to die in a plane crash on December 24th in St. Louis on her way back to Los Angeles for Christmas. And this will lead to a constitutional crisis in which Michelle Obama will ultimately become the temporary president. Joe Biden is also predicted to step down due to a stroke. This will lead to Barack Obama being appointed the vice president and then him becoming the president. Anyway, back to this subject of the prediction for Trump's death. First things first, Trump's death is predicted to be on December 16th. The date that this video was posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does the time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. Confirm this. And if you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Okay, and so along the way, God has been developing a trail of signs regarding this particular event that connect this trail of signs are prophetic signs that connect to each other. One date in this trail of signs was December 14th. There are videos, for example, on this channel that predict that President Trump would die on December 14th, and the analysis is 100% correct. The signs we received on December 14th, like all of the other steps in the trail of signs, confirmed the analysis. God was indeed pointing to December 14th, just as he was pointing to, for example, December 12th, for the signs, for the prediction, for the death of President Trump. On December 12th, for example, we received the prophetic sign that confirmed the analysis, and one of the signs was the naming of Trump as Person of the Year for the second time by Time magazine, which revealed adding 2 days to get December 14th. This is how it works. Don't ask me. Well, I know how it works. I mean, I understand why he does this too. But if you're new to this, this is how it works, all right? It's just the way it is. God points to a date and then it reveals the further signs confirming. Now, having said that, had there been further insight, it could have been possible to know December 16th ahead of the signs on December 12th and 14th. But I'm just not that bright. Okay, I mean, in retrospect, I can see how, the prior signs from years ago reveal December 16th, 2024. It's not that it wasn't possible to foresee this. I just wasn't open, if you will, to recognizing December 16th, and furthermore, recognizing that the 12th and then the 14th would only be steps. I mean, it's quite hard to do that because the evidence for the 12th was so overwhelming that you had to figure that, well, it's only 5 days before the electors meet. I wasn't thinking about a possible day in between the 12th and the 17th, but that ended up being the case. So I was, in fact, if you will, blinded by my own bias to only looking at the 12th. Now, the 12th was 100% correct, as was the 14th. And so, God was pointing, and furthermore, the same with the 14th. I couldn't have expected that, in fact, the 14th would be just another step. Because prior to those dates, it was not known, for example, that Trump would be ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange near Wall Street, near Ground Zero, where the 9/11 events took place and Trump would be named Person of the Year, all of that was revealed on the 11th. And it was known that the 12th was being pointed to by God many weeks before the 12th. And anyway, and then likewise with the 14th, it was not known until right before the 14th that Trump would be attending another Army-Navy game. But these are the signs that confirm all of the analysis, as I will explain here. For example, this video being about what happened on the 14th. So the trail of signs regarding Trump's death led to December 14th, 2024. On December 14th, 2024, we received the relevant prophetic signs. Trump's attendance at the annual Army-Navy game and the joint notice filed between ABC News, George Stephanopoulos, and Donald Trump regarding Trump's defamation lawsuit. Okay, these are the two main signs. Also, Trump called out the drones controversy on the state, which I'll explain at the end of this video. The settlement consists of $15 million that ABC will pay to a charitable cause of Trump's choosing and $1 million to Trump's counsel. This hints at the 15th of the month of December plus 1 day, which points to December 16th, 2024. In the Army-Navy game, the star player for Navy, player number 11, scored the first touchdown of the game on a 1-yard run in the first quarter. This hinted at adding 1 plus 1 days to the date of this game, December 14th, to reach December 16th. There's more prophetic significance to the number 11, which I'll elaborate more on in a minute. There was one interception thrown in the game. An interception is a turnover of the ball to the other team, and this is symbolic of political power being intercepted and turned over to the other team. In this case, the blue team, Democrats, socialists, whatever you want to call them. The final score of the game of 31-13 sums to 44, which hints at the power about to be turned over to the 44th president after Trump's predicted death. At the same time of the interception, at the time of the interception, the score was 7-0, which points to Trump. Trump is a type for Joshua, who led the Israelites around the walls of security of Jericho once per day for 7 days, and then on the 7th day, they marched around 7 times while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets. And I'm just going to play a short clip explaining a little bit more about how Trump is a type for Joshua in the Bible, and I'll be right back. President Trump is God's trumpet that he uses to highlight and confirm his signs. The word trump in archaic English means trumpet or the sounding of a trumpet. Donald Trump was born on a Sabbath day, and the portion of Torah that was read in synagogues on the day that Trump was born was the passage from the book of Numbers, in which God commanded the making of trumpets. Trump was born exactly 23 months, which happens to be exactly 700 days, before Israel was reborn. And God used Trump in prophetic signs regarding the restoration of Israel. Donald Trump chose his running mate, Mike Pence, and their two names, Trump-Pence, hints at trumpets. Trump's presidency, including his election campaign, was synonymous with his border wall of security. Before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment on ancient Jericho, the Hebrews blew trumpets. Before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment on the ancient city of Jericho, the Hebrews marched around Jericho's walls of security 7 times over 7 days while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets. This was 3 sets of 7. In the book of Revelation, which describes God's judgment in the end times period, there are also 3 sets of 7 judgments. When the Hebrews blew the trumpets at Jericho, it was an announcement from God of judgment on the city of Jericho. Likewise, President Trump's presidency was an announcement of judgment on the nation of America, God's Gentile nation and the only other nation in history besides Israel that was founded on a relationship with God. This is why President Trump's election campaign and presidency were synonymous with his border wall of security, and why on the first day of his presidency, on Inauguration Day, President Trump was exactly 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old, which was 3 sets of 7, and paralleled the 3 sets of 7 in the book of Joshua. Through the symbolic very beginning of Trump's presidency, God announced judgment on the nation. Joshua, the leader of the Hebrews, led them around the walls of security 7 times over 7 days, while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets. On the day that President Trump was elected by 77 electoral votes, the leader of Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, had been in power for exactly 7 years, 7 months, and 7 days. The interception was thrown by Army's quarterback number 13, who led his team to 13 points in the game. In the Bible, the number 13 is symbolic of the Antichrist. Nimrod, a type for the Antichrist, was the 13th generation from Adam. Haman, another type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Jews on the 13th days of the month. And the mark of the Antichrist, the 2 Antichrists are described in the book of Revelation in chapter 13. Also, the mark of the Antichrist is described in Revelation chapter 13. The mark of the Antichrist gives a person blood disease, and G131 in Strong's Greek Concordance is the word that means blood disease. The interception thrown by Army quarterback number 13 was caught by Navy player number 1, which hints at G131. Navy's win in the game upset number 22 ranked Army. The Army football team is ranked number 22 in the college football. The number 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist in God's signs. As, for example, the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist in the book of Ezekiel would have been a Tav mark, a Tav letter, and in ancient... the ancient Hebrew letters are also symbols for things, and the Tav letter is symbolic of a mark. But also the Tav is the last and 22nd letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and the mark of the Antichrist is described in the book of Revelation and the mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book in the Bible, which is the 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. Also, the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's chromosomes, which are symbolized by an X, which in Paleo-Hebrew was a Tav mark. And the chromosomes come in pairs, and a chromosome is made of 2 arms. And so 2 and 2 and 22, symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. As explained in other videos, December 14th, 2024, connected to the iconic Seinfeld episode titled Heart Attack, which was a prophetic sign that revealed Trump will die from a heart attack. In fact, the fulfillment of this cryptic prophecy in this episode that was fulfilled in 2019 in December was the first time that it was recognized that God was communicating that Trump would die from a heart attack. Okay, so again, though, I explained in other videos how December 14th, the date we are talking about regarding, for example, this Army-Navy game, connected to the iconic Seinfeld episode titled Heart Attack. In the episode, George Costanza suffers a blue face and is thought to be having a heart attack. George Stephanopoulos is married, and that's the sign on the December 14th date, the defamation lawsuit agreement, joint notice. George Stephanopoulos is married to actress Ali Wentworth. She played Jerry Seinfeld's girlfriend in the iconic The Soup Nazi episode. This is why Daniel Penny, a U.S. veteran recently found to be innocent of his charges, attended the Army-Navy game with Trump. Penny restricted a man, if you will, on a New York City subway who was making threats because he was hungry. The Soup Nazi in New York City gets long lineups for his delicious soup, which he strictly regulates. As in Daniel Penny restricting the homeless guy that was hungry, threatening people because he was hungry, saying that he's hungry, he doesn't care what he's going to do, he's hungry. This is symbolic of the strictly controlled lineups for food in the soon coming food shortage, which the Antichrist Barack Obama will enforce, similar to the soup Nazi in the Seinfeld episode. The name penny hints at how bank accounts and digital programmable currency will be used to enforce the restriction, as in pennies restricting the man, on buying and selling of the rationed food to only those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist. This is how the mark of the Antichrist will be enforced. People will not be able to buy or sell food if they do not take it, if they do not become one of the supposed good citizens, worthy of the food. Further support of this symbolism in the name penny was that on the day that Penny was charged, another prophetic sign involving Daniel Penny, and that was because of the controversy. It was a big deal as to whether or not he would be charged. On the day that he was ultimately charged, a man pleaded guilty to intentionally crashing his plane in order to promote a wallet on YouTube. Okay, wallet, penny, digital wallet. This was also the day that the infamous cheating fishermen in the Cleveland fishing tournament were sentenced to 10 days in jail, which hinted at the 10 days of testing in Revelation chapter 2 for the church. And they were forced to forfeit their 130,000 boat that they won in the fishing tournament that they cheated in. 130,000 hints at the $13 of pay that the 54th Massachusetts Regiment were not paid. That was the equivalent of the other white Northern soldiers' pay, which was official policy from Washington, D.C., an oppressive minority law against the 1st Black Regiment in the Civil War, which is part of this theme of slavery and freedom, which is the theme of life and the Bible. That's why God is using this theme in his signs of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, who were not paid the $13 that the white Northern soldiers were paid. Again, 13 is symbolic of the Antichrist and mark of the Antichrist, which will be enforced through currency, pay, digital programmable currency. Okay, now if you don't know the story of the Cleveland fishing tournament cheating scandal, it occurred also in context of a number of other cheating scandals, so many at such a period of time. Within 10 days, And it was commented in the mainstream media about why in the world are there all of these cheating scandals, national news stories at the same time, including the biggest poker cheating scandal in history, the biggest chess cheating scandal in history. There was other more obscure ones, like the Irish dancing cheating scandal and the beanbag game that they play in southern states cheating scandal, and on and on. That was all because of it coincided with the timing of the New York Yankees player Aaron Judge, player number 99. Number 9 symbolizes God's judgment, tying at this same time the home run record of 61 home runs that Roger Maris hit in 1961, the year that the Antichrist was born. And that's a controversy because of Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa in the home run derby in 1998. And the controversy is whether or not they deserve the home run title because they cheated. And how did they cheat? They took things. They took things that had things in it and they put it inside themselves. You know what I'm talking about. And this is all symbolic of the thing, the mark of the Antichrist, which God pointed to brilliantly, so creatively, through all of these cheating scandals at the same time. There's lots more to this that's explained in the beautiful video that I made that's titled The Cheating Scandals Video. Make sure you go back and look for that video. It's one of 50 videos that predict that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on February 10th. I could not continue to update the trail of signs past February 10th, and I left those 50 videos that must be watched. And the analysis is 100% correct because February 10th was a date that God was pointing to in the trail of signs leading to the predicted death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, which is now predicted to be on December 24th. Anyway, that's an amazing video. Make sure you watch that, but also the lesson here too is that you need to watch all of the videos that predicted Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash on February 10th. They must be watched. Every minute of them. So anyway, that's why the Cleveland fishing tournament scandal is part of this story, okay? Well, anyway, back to what we were talking about with Daniel Penny, who, by the way, was charged again on the same day of the sentencing of the fishermen. Penny's controversial charges came on the same day that Title 42 expired, which was also controversial, at the border wall of security, which hints at Trump. So Daniel Penny connects to Trump in this way. This is the reason for this sign involving Trump, who is symbolic of walls of security symbolism, and Daniel Penny, who were in attendance together at this Army-Navy game. And Daniel Penny, again, is a U.S. veteran. Okay. George Stephanopoulos is married to the actress from the Soup Nazi episode, and Trump is predicted to die on the exact 40 plus 40th anniversary, which hints at the 44th president, of the last major German offensive, the German Nazi offensive in the Battle of the Bulge. Okay, so that's a clue here. We get this Soup Nazi sign on December 14th, the date that God was pointing to ahead of time. And that actually was part of this confirmation that Trump will die on the anniversary of the last Nazi offensive in the Battle of the Bulge, which is prophetic in itself because it hints at the 44th president, who will become the president again as a result of Trump's death. The name Trump is a German name. Trump, a type for Joshua, who led the Israelites around the walls of security once per day for 7 days, and then on the seventh day marched around 7 times while blowing 7 priests blew 7 trumpets. It was in fact a 7 and a 7 times 7, a symbolic 3 sets of 7, but was also more precisely a 7 and a 7 times 7. And Trump, who is a type for Joshua, was born 77 weeks and 7 days after the Battle of the Bulge began. The walls of security of Jericho collapsed due to an earthquake. Archaeology proves this. The Battle of the Bulge was exactly 133 years, which is the 44th semi-prime number, which hints at the 44th president, after the major New Madrid earthquake on December 16th, 1811. I forget the details of this earthquake, but God pointed to this through the eclipses that crossed over each other. The two paths of the eclipses in 2017 and 2024 crossed over each other over the New Madrid seismic hot zone. The 2017 eclipse, furthermore, passed over all of the hot zone centers of all of the major seismic zones in the US. And so, in other words, God is pointing to this upcoming earthquake centered in the New Madrid seismic zone that will split the nation in two and cause the Great Lakes to spill out onto the Midwestern states. And this will be which will result in America being divided in two by a waterway, a sea, stretching from the Gulf of Mexico to the Great Lakes. This will be testimony in the 1,000 years of peace in the millennial reign of King Jesus' rule from Jerusalem. That will be testament to America and the world attempting to divide God's land, Israel, and make Jerusalem an international city. And anyway, that's why the coming New Madrid seismic zone earthquake that's coming. Well, anyway, okay, so back to Trump, though. He was born 77 weeks and 7 days after the Battle of the Bulge, and that in turn was exactly 133 years after the New Madrid earthquake. Okay, and Trump will die on the anniversary of the New Madrid earthquake. When asked for the signs of his return to look for by the disciples, Jesus replied with earthquake signs. It's like the quintessential sign, if you will. And so that's how we connect to Trump's death here, to the Madrid earthquake. Now, Trump is predicted to die on December 16th, 2024, exactly 4 times 4 times 4 months, which also hints at the 44th president, after the 4.2, which hints at 42, a number that is associated with the period of the end and the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, magnitude earthquake in Hutchinson, Kansas. The first of 3 prophetic earthquakes in Hutchinson, Kansas, that identified the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day. Okay, so in Revelation chapter 2, Jesus said twice that he hates the Nicolaitans and their doctrine, and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. Unfortunately, today, the vast majority of Christians in America have this doctrine. And Jesus, or the Lord, identified this precisely what the doctrine is through the big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. And one of the main reasons why God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel is because this is the only channel that I'm aware of that's talking about prophecy and calling out how God is very, very displeased with the American church. In fact, the main theme of God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is warning for the church and their doctrine, which Jesus hates, which the Christians today have. Why is the Hutchinson, Kansas earthquakes relevant? Because of Ann Hutchinson, the leader of the antinomianism, otherwise known as free grace movement, at the spiritual founding of America in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, which almost destroyed the colony. Her and her followers and their divisiveness. And today, these people with this doctrine are equally divisive. They don't know that, though. They don't see themselves that way. They don't at all see themselves that way, but they are as divisive as Hutchinson. Hutchinson and her followers, well, Hutchinson, as a result of the antinomianism free grace movement, were banished from the colony. She moved to Rhode Island and then was murdered by Native Indians. Just, that wouldn't have happened if God was on her side, right? In that controversy. But today, the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians in America have the Anne Hutchinson doctrine. The Anne Hutchinson doctrine is the free grace doctrine, which is completely related to the sovereign grace doctrine, Reformed theology, which is Protestant doctrine. The Protestant Reformation was, in fact, a revivification of Augustinianism, and Augustine corrupted the Western Church in the 4th century, centuries after the early church, the other early church fathers that either knew an apostle or knew someone that did and spoke the original Greek. But Calvin Calvin titled his writings Systematic Augustinianism, and he disparaged the other early church fathers and only quoted Augustine. Luther was an Augustinian monk. Luther, for example, wanted to take and remove from the Bible the book of Revelation, Hebrews, and the book of James, because they contradict his doctrine. But actually, every other page in the Bible contradicts their doctrine. And I'm talking about the doctrine of evangelicals today. Every other page you can find something that flatly, clearly, obviously contradicts their doctrine. The last warning that Peter gave was to those that twist the writings of Paul to their own destruction. That's what these Christians do today in America. They isolate passages of Paul to prove their doctrine while ignoring other passages of Paul, but also horribly interpret the teachings of Jesus through the writings of Paul instead of the other way around. In fact, it's gotten to the point in their dispensationalism where the supposed church age doesn't begin to well into the book of Acts and has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus. It's obscene. Jesus hates this. Okay, now the word Nicolaitan means ruling over the laity. It's a Greek word, it's a compound word. It means ruling over the laity. The so-called rulers over the laity today, pastors, priests, they'll tell you that we can't really know who the Nicolaitans were. It's really obscure what Jesus was talking about, even though he mentioned it twice, and obviously it's for our time, the end times. But actually it's quite clear and very simple. It's them. They are the Nicolaitans because the word means ruling over the laity. This is why Jesus forbid teachers and why John said, for you do not need a teacher. You know that. You don't need to be taught and have a teacher. You have the Holy Spirit, and also we have the Scripture, and we also have fellowship. We don't need teachers. Teachers, pastors are the problem. Jesus forbid them. He also forbid preaching for money, strictly. The passages that these quote-unquote pastors use to support their preaching for money are twisted out of context, and they leave a verse or that out of that comes right before the passage that they're isolating. The preaching for money and pastors, these teachers, are what have cemented, institutionalized these egregious errors that are not only Jehovah's Witness and Catholicism, because there wouldn't be these things if it weren't for preaching for money and the moneyed church system and teachers, but they've also, in evangelical church culture, have institutionalized Reformed theology, which is once saved, always saved. Reformed theology or Calvinism, sovereign grace comes in the package of Calvinism, free grace comes in the package of dispensationalism, and they both lead to the heretic Gnostic doctrine. And I mean that Gnostic literally because Augustine was a Gnostic was a member officially of he was an official auditor of the Manichaean Gnostic sect for 9 years before he joined the Catholic Church, which is why in his latter writings he incorporated and brought in Gnosticism. Gnosticism meaning to be saved through knowledge, which is what Calvinists believe. You are saved through holding the precise, correct doctrine, which is why they squirm when they hear anything else because it threatens their salvation, so they think, which is why it's wicked deception from Satan. Because if you get the wrong doctrine, if you believe intellectually the wrong thing, you're not saved, right? Well, the phrase saved by faith alone only occurs once in the Bible, and it's when James used it and said, for you see, a person is not saved by faith alone, but by their works. Now they'll reply, well, you can't earn your salvation. That's very clever, very, very clever. Sounds Christian. But there's two parts to salvation as illustrated through Abraham. Abraham was deemed righteous through him believing and trusting in God's promises, but then he actualized his faith when God requested that Abraham sacrifice his only son. And then once Abraham was demonstrating his faith, because faith is a doing, as James illustrated in his book, in his chapter 2, God sent the angel and told Abraham, stop, do not harm the boy, for now I know that you fear me. Because God didn't know prior to that. So much for predestination, which is an abhorrent part of the Reformed theology doctrine. The idea that God knows beforehand who will go to heaven and who will go to hell. Well, anyway, so I'm getting off track here. If you are a Christian, make sure you watch arguably the most important video on this channel, the 23 church signs video. This will explain much more. When the prediction comes to pass, though, make no mistake. I know far better than you the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God and why God has given me a voice through this prediction. And it is to prove what I have just said. It is to prove the controversial things that I am saying in this video and other videos. It is to prove what I have just said regarding the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day. That's why these Hutchinson earthquakes. So back to the subject here. This earthquake on August 16th, 2019, which will be exactly 4 times 4 months before Trump's predicted death. Okay, and Trump, and by the way, before the walls of security collapsed on Jericho due to an earthquake, the Israelites blew trumpets, one long last trumpet blast. This will be the last trump sign, which is also not only a parallel or a pattern with the book of Joshua, but the Apostle Paul used this phrase, the last trump, as well. In archaic English, the word trump means trumpet, or the sounding of a trumpet. And so that's why we have these earthquakes now that I'm describing, explaining, connecting to the date that Trump is predicted to die on December 16th, exactly 4 times 4 months after August 16th, 2019, the day of this Hutchinson earthquake, the 4.2 earthquake, which was the first of 3 prophetic earthquakes in Hutchinson, Kansas, because God was pointing to Anne Hutchinson and identifying specifically the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day, which is the free grace and Reformed theology doctrine, which is the doctrine of the vast majority of Christians in America. And that's why they have a lack of fear and are complacent, which is why the Church of Laodicea is America that thinks it is in need of nothing, the American church, that is. They are in need of nothing because they are once saved, always saved, which isn't true. No one is saved past tense. Someone's on the path to salvation. And for those that want to argue, well, how are you going to know? Well, that's why we have the Holy Spirit, to tell us whether or not we are on the path or not, on the direction of being saved. Okay, so the first of the 3 prophetic earthquakes in Hutchinson, Kansas. Okay, let me see. The 4.2 earthquake was followed 11 minutes later by an aftershock of 3.1. In the Army-Navy game, player number 11 for Navy led his team to 31 points in a game that totaled 44 points, which hints at this 4 times 4 months connection to the 3.1 earthquake 11 minutes after the primary earthquake in Hutchinson, Kansas. Did you follow that? Okay. So again, in the game, the player number 11 led his team to 31 points, and the game totaled 44 points. And all of this is pointing to the 4 times 4 months connection to the 3.1, which hints at the 31 points, 11 minutes after the first earthquake, which, okay, you get it. So the 4.2 and 3.1 earthquakes in Hutchinson on August 16th, 2000, that's a typo. The 4.2 and 3.1 earthquakes in Hutchinson on August 16th, 2019 were exactly 50 months after Trump descended the golden escalator, the symbolic big beginning of Trump, when he descended the golden escalator in his Trump Tower, which was in turn exactly 188 months after the 7.0 earthquake in Joshua Tree, California. Okay, now the reason for 188 is because this hints at the H188 word in the Hebrew concordance that is the word that means woe, exclamation mark, used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God. The 7.0 because of Joshua, that's why it was in Joshua Tree, who led the Israelites around 7 days before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. It was a woe. And that was after, of course, they blew the trumpets, one long last trumpet blast. Okay, and that earthquake on October 16th, 1999 is exactly 25 years and 2 months before Trump's predicted death, the last Trump sign. So the extremely prophetic earthquake in Joshua Tree, California is 25 years and 2 months before the date it is predicted that Trump would die. And that makes all the sense in the world. Because this earthquake is about Trump, right? Trump is a type for Joshua. And 25 years and 2 months is a big end times number. It hints at, symbolizes the 2,520 days number, a period of time also in the most central prophecy in the Bible regarding the period of the end and the Antichrist. So this, you would think that ultimately the earthquake in Joshua Tree would connect to the date of Trump's death, the last Trump sign. And it does. Okay, not only that though, I'm going to tell you something else. So it connects, the earthquake connects with 188 months to Trump's beginning, right? Which that date, which was June 16th, 2015, that date was exactly 73 weeks, which hints at 3 sets of 7, as in Joshua, to the day that Trump won the election by 77 electoral votes. That was the same day that the leader of Israel, Netanyahu, as in the leader of the Israelites, Joshua, had been in office for exactly 7 years, 7 months, and 7 days. That day, in turn, when Trump won by 77 electoral votes, was 73 days, as in 3 sets of 7, before Trump's inauguration at the age of 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old, in a year ending in the number 7. And that day, in turn, was 77 days before Trump launched the 7th super prime number of missiles into the Middle East, which is near where Jericho is. All right. In 2019 and 2020, Trump attended the Army-Navy Games. The 2019 game was in Lincoln Field in Philadelphia. One of the, by the way, that's symbolic of one of the 7 churches, the only church that Jesus wrote letters to of the 7 churches that he said would be spared the hour of tribulation and persecution from the Antichrist. And so in 2019, Trump was at the Army-Navy game, and it was in Lincoln Field, a name of a president in Philadelphia. And it was 45 days, as in the 45th president, after the brush fire at the Reagan Library, which threatened to burn down the Reagan Library, which houses Reagan's airplane, which was also a prophetic sign that pointed to the coming death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, which will lead to the rise of the Antichrist. But of course, Ronald Reagan was also a president, and the Army-Navy game was the 120th Army-Navy game that year, and it was the anniversary, the 220th anniversary of the death of President George Washington. Okay, I just can't explain everything over and over. 220 symbolizes the second coming, 2 times 110 stories that collapsed on 9/11. Trump called in to Channel 9 News on 9/11, and on and on. All right, so Trump is a type for Washington and God's signs, make sure you watch all of the videos. And this is the reason for the connections to George Stephanopoulos and George Costanza. Okay, so I'm going to read that again. Trump is a type for George Washington in God's signs, because through the 9/11 events, for example, when Trump called into Channel 9 News, he inadvertently trumpeted that his tower on Wall Street had become the tallest tower in lower Manhattan. And through the 9/11 events, God pointed to George Washington, who was inaugurated on Wall Street and then marched down Wall Street into Trinity Chapel, where he consecrated the nation to God, saying that if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its divine protection and blessings, which it temporarily did on 9/11. That's why the Trinity Chapel today is known as the Miracle Chapel, the only building at ground zero that survived the falling debris without a broken window or even a scratch due to the uprooted sycamore tree, which today there's a 20-foot-high bronze statue of the roots of the tree commemorating the tree that saved the chapel, and that's because of the ancient warning to the ancient Israel by the raid of the Assyrians in Isaiah chapter 9:11, and it speaks of the uprooted sycamore trees and how the bricks have fallen. Okay, so Trump is a type for George Washington in his signs, and that's why on this day, the connections to George Stephanopoulos and George Costanza on the day of the Army-Navy game in 2024. And again, Trump, and this was also, again, the anniversary of Washington's death. Okay. Trump, a type for Joshua, attended the 2020 Army-Navy game after he flew his helicopter over the 7-city Jericho March gathering events of protesters of the shoplifted referendum. Trump said he wished he could be with them, but he was obligated to go to the Army-Navy game. Trump tossed the coin in the ceremonial, the coin toss in both the 2019 and 2020 games. Okay, and by the way, of course, the Jericho March in the 7 cities, since at the walls of security of Jericho that collapsed in God's judgment after the trumpets were blown when the Israelites marched around Jericho for once per day for 7 days. Okay, so Trump tossed the coin toss in the 2019 and 2020 games, and in both instances, the result was tails. In 9/11, God speaks of Israel becoming the tail, or the cutting off the head and the tail. But, more importantly, this pointed to the metaphor of the head or tail God used in Deuteronomy chapter 28 regarding the outcome for the Israelites who were entering the promised land, depending on whether they would obey his commandments or not. The 120th Army-Navy game in Lincoln Field in Philadelphia was not long, by the way, number 120 because of this number, and it's 120 years. That's why it's, okay, in the book of Genesis, there's a period of 120 years that God tells Noah will be from that time until the flood judgment and the destruction. That's why this 120th, which is 120 years, of the Army-Navy game that Trump attended, which was a prophetic sign. Now, as I'm saying, that game was not long after the most famous trick play in Super Bowl history made by Philadelphia. Okay? In the 120th, the Philadelphia Eagles. In the 120th Army-Navy game in Philadelphia, in Lincoln Field, where the Philadelphia Eagles play, the same trick play was attempted. Philadelphia, and I believe it was attempted by the quarterback whose name is Mark, as in Mark of the Antichrist. Philadelphia won the Philadelphia Eagles won this or that highest ever scoring Super Bowl, which was a shootout between the two quarterbacks who each made 28 pass completions, which is a remarkable number of completions, and they both made exactly 28 pass completions. This game between the Philadelphia Eagles was against the New England Patriots, who symbolize the 11-ship flotilla of pilgrims that arrived in New England, led by John Winthrop, who before disembarking their ships, delivered his famous City on a Hill speech, which Ronald Reagan's farewell speech was derived from too, by the way, which is another connection to the Reagan Library fire 45 days before Trump was in Lincoln, where the trick play was attempted, which pointed to the Philadelphia Eagles trick play, which pointed to the New England Patriots and John Winthrop and his City on a Hill speech that was derived from Deuteronomy chapter 28. That's amazing, right? That's why the two quarterbacks that completed 28 passes each, because it hints at the duality, the choice in Deuteronomy 28 between blessings and curses, depending on whether or not they would obey God's commandments. And the Pilgrims saw their crossing of the Atlantic and escape from religious persecution from the King of England as analogous to the Israelites' escape of persecution from the King of Egypt and their crossing of the Jordan River into the Promised Land. The Pilgrims saw the New World as their Promised Land, and that's why Winthrop gave a speech that was basically Deuteronomy chapter 28. And that's why the New England Patriots, in this highest ever scoring game, which enabled the two quarterbacks to throw a remarkable 28 completions each, pointed to the blessings and curses, the contrast, the two choices, as in two quarterbacks throwing 28 completions, the two choices in Deuteronomy chapter 28, which were the two choices that the Pilgrims and the Americans had. America was God's Gentile nation, his nation of disciples, that has now turned away from God and now will be destroyed as described in Deuteronomy chapter 28. And actually, read that chapter. The parallels in the manner in which it's destroyed are remarkable. For one thing, it says an eagle will swoop down, and one of the planes that swooped down on 9/11 that flew into the Twin Towers had an eagle on its tail. It was swooping down. It was an American Eagle's flight, but it had an eagle. By the way, it was Flight 11 with a crew of 11 people that flew into the Twin Towers. It looked like a giant 11 in New York State, the 11th state to join the Union, because Jesus coined the phrase the 11th hour, which in ancient Israel referred to the last hour of daylight before darkness. And in English is an idiom that means last chance, time is running out, as in last chance for America to repent and turn back to God. But this Flight 11 departed from Logan Airport on Governor's Island in Boston, and Governor's Island is where the first governor lived, John Winthrop, who led the 11-ship flotilla, which was why it was Flight 11, with a crew of 11 that flew into the Twin Towers. It looked like a giant 11 in New York State, the 11th state. And by the way, that's also why it was 101 passengers on the Mayflower that arrived, that hinted at 11, and why their journey across the Atlantic took an arduous 66 days, which is the 11th triangular number, and why on the propeller of the Titanic is a big serial number 101. It points at the crossing of the Mayflower across the Atlantic of 101 passengers. Anyway, that's why the 28 passes by each of these quarterbacks, including the quarterback for New England, and that's why this game in which the same trick play was attempted in Philadelphia. And now we get back to what I'm talking about, which is these two coin tosses. It is through these two coin tosses Trump made at the Army-Navy games that ended in tails that God communicated that America's military power is about to be changed from the head of the nations into the tail among the nations, because that's what the tail and the head is referring to in Deuteronomy 28. Whether Israel will be the head of nations or the tail of nations. God is communicating the end or the downfall of the American military power through trumpet, God's trumpet, trumpeting tails twice at these games, which again pointed back to the Super Bowl and Deuteronomy 28. This is also the reason why the star player of the 2024 Army-Navy game was player number 11, who scored the first touchdown, again, symbolic, God uses firsts for signs, and the reason why the interception was caught by player number 1 in the first quarter. It's 11. 11, by the way, the reason why the 11 is because it hints at Deuteronomy 28. It hints at the reflection between promises of blessings and curses. A 1 is a reflection, an 11 is a reflection between two ones. That's why. If God were going to symbolize reflection in a number, it would be 11. It wouldn't be 22 or 33. It would be the first one, 11. It's a simple line in a line, 11. It's a reflection. That's why it was 11 ships. And then Winthrop's speech from Deuteronomy 28 about the reflection between blessings and curses. And that's why the interception by player number 1 in the first quarter, it's also a reflection. Symbolism. Okay, on December 14th, 2024, Trump weighed in with criticism on the recent drones controversy and said they should be shot down. December 14th, 2024 was exactly 97 weeks after the Chinese spy balloon was shot down. The name Barak is equal to 97 in Hebrew gematria. 97 is the 25th prime number, and Obama will become the president again through the use of the 25th Amendment. This 97 weeks is also 1 year, 10 months, and 10 days, which hints at G111 in the Greek concordance, which is the word that means abomination, which is the mark of the Antichrist, which the demons pretending to be aliens will promote, along with the Antichrist. The China, as in red dragon in Revelation, in the book of Revelation, spy balloon that was shot down was symbolic of the weather balloon that fell on Roswell, New Mexico. The Roswell incident is symbolic of aliens and UFOs, which are in reality demons pretending to be aliens, as a test of faith for quote-unquote Christians, because only those who have a solid biblical worldview will not fall for the deception. Because it is impossible for the Bible to be true and there to be aliens. Right? Furthermore, God became a man and died for the sins of men. He didn't hopscotch around the universe dying on other planets for the sins of aliens in the form of another alien. But man is the center of God's creation. That's the biblical worldview, and that's why the deception is coming that contradicts that. Okay, now, it is predicted that on June 9th, 2025, aliens will be in the mainstream news. Perhaps on this day, the first of the two antichrists, Pope Francis, will announce that aliens have made him the ambassador for the world. June 9th, 2025 is 25 weeks and 2 days, which again hints at 2,520 days in Bible prophecy, and is also 177 days after Trump weighed in on the drones controversy. Trump was born on the day of a prophetic blood moon lunar eclipse, and blood moons in a prophetic tetrad of blood moons are spaced 177 days apart. 177 is 59 plus 59 plus 59, and 59 is the seventh superprime number, making this a symbolic 3 sets of 7, which is Joshua, and Trump is a type for Joshua, which makes 177 symbolic of 3 sets of 7, which is why Trump launched 59 missiles into the Middle East 77 days after he was inaugurated at the age of 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old. This is merely scratching the surface of the reasons for how this prediction is known in advance. For more information, please visit Odyssey, spelled ODYSEE.com, or Rumble.com video channels named Harris Crash Prediction, and also read the website TrumpPrediction.com. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived, and more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.